the reality as it exists today, and Ukraine cannot win this war. There's not a rational, sane person that can articulate a case for Ukraine winning this war. Therefore, everything that transpires from this moment on is nothing more than an act of futility on the part of the Ukrainian government. And it's the Ukrainian civilians that are going to pay the price, not just now, but decades from now, because their country is gone. It's finished, it's destroyed.
4 p.m. GMT on the 5th of April 2022. It's The Beautiful Truth with Fintan Dunn reporting, and that is Scott Ritter in a stunning 2-hour performance on the Duran yesterday. And I've extracted the best, most essential 15 minutes out of that. So you're going to get the key information about the alleged massacre, which took place allegedly in Bucha, and also the current state of the war, the kind of war the Russians have been fighting, and how they're going to finish that war. An epic performance by Scott Ritter. I let him get on with explaining the state of the war in Ukraine. And I'll speak to you later.
If this was the United States, do you really think that the refinery that the Russians hit the other night, Kermonton or whatever, would have lasted nearly a month into the war? No, it would have been blown up on day one. Do you think that the train network that has allowed Ukrainian refugees to flee from Kharkiv and eastern Ukraine to Lvov and to Poland, that train network would have been left intact? Nope, it would have been blown up on day one. You think there'd be a bridge in Ukraine today standing? No, they would have all blown. That's what we do. That's what I did. I mean, I looked at a target, and we looked at the strategic, importance of everything, and we killed it all. We blew it all up. You want military industry? It was all blown up. Civil industry, we call that dual capable, by the way, because if you can produce a car, you can produce a tank. So we blow that up too. We would have taken it all out. The Russians didn't do this. They didn't do this until now. So the longer this war goes on, the more Russia is going to be compelled to destroy that which Ukraine will need to reconstitute itself once this war is over. And the blame is solely on the Ukrainian government. Solely on the Ukrainian government. Not because I'm justifying the Russian incursion, but because we have to deal with reality. We have to deal with the reality as it exists today, and Ukraine cannot win this war. There's not a rational, sane person that can articulate a case for Ukraine winning this war. Therefore, everything that transpires from this moment on is nothing more than an act of futility on the part of the Ukrainian government. And it's the Ukrainian civilians that are going to pay the price, not just now, but decades from now, because their country is gone. It's finished, it's destroyed. But the Russians said up front, we're not at war with the Ukrainian civilians. That calculus may have changed, but going in, we are not at war with Ukrainian civilians. And so every soldier was briefed on how you're going to treat the Ukrainian civilians with respect and how you're going to minimize damage to civilian infrastructure. And we know this because that's what we saw in the first weeks of the war. We saw the Russians come in very soft. Even the Ukrainians admit it. Talk to the Ukrainians. The soldiers came in, they were very polite. The soldiers, the mayor, I was briefed that I could retain control, but I needed to make sure we weren't hiding guns and stuff like that. But once they searched for weapons, I was in control of the town. I was told to keep doing my job. The civilians were told to keep living their lives. So in that, commander's intent being executed nearly flawlessly by the Russian soldier, so flawlessly that the Russian soldiers are taking casualties as a result of their soft approach, means that the Russians are an extremely well-trained, well-disciplined force. And they're obeying the orders. They understand the importance of these orders. So now they're in Bucha, up north. I think that's where we're going to here. And Bucha was a bloody battle. I mean, one only has to take a look at the videotape. You see that the airborne especially suffered great casualties in Bucha. They lost dozens of vehicles. They probably lost hundreds of men. But eventually they controlled Bucha. They controlled it for a number of weeks. The Russians have said while we were in Bucha, we treated the Ukrainian civilians with great respect. We let them continue to have their cell phones. Imagine, I just want people to think about this for a second. The cell phone is the ultimate conduit of intelligence. I mean, we've seen videotapes of Ukrainian children being arrested by the Ukrainian police because they took a photograph of something, put it on social media, and could have been used to target, used by the Russians to target, as if the Russians need 10-year-olds video to target. They don't have satellites. They don't have, but the logic doesn't matter. The point is, the first thing you would normally do in a combat operation of this thing is just jam all communications. And then anybody who has a cell phone, you seize the cell phones. And you have every right to do so, every right. But the Russians did not do that. They told them, use your cell phones. We're not interfering with your life. Live your life. And they did things like the Russians said, look, we traded our dry goods for their dairy product. So, if the soldiers wanted milk, if they wanted cheese, if they wanted cream, if they wanted eggs, there was a barter system where the Russians would bring in dry goods and get this. In fact, now this is fine and dandy, except one thing. This war has become, even though the Russians came in claiming that the Ukrainians were their Slavic brothers, their cousins, and they wanted to respect this, they didn't want to harm. This war has become something different, especially from the Ukrainian standpoint. Ukrainians right now, the nationalists, I should say, who control some of the key police and military and governmental structures, have turned this into a war of hate, where the Russian has become a subhuman, and can, we saw there was a communication coming out of, I think, Dnipro or Dnipropetrovsk, where the mayor was saying, kill them all, kill them, they're subhumans, kill them all. And we've seen similar things, castrate Russian prisoners, so forth and so forth. So we've seen this become a visceral war of hatred, especially from the Ukrainian side, where collaborators are killed, tortured, murdered. And we know this because we've seen that in Mariupol, we've seen it elsewhere. So now the Russians are in Bucha. They've worked out an arrangement for peaceful coexistence with the population. And now they withdraw. And the first units in are the Ukrainian National Police. But they're not national police. They're the Azov battalion reconfigured as the national police. We know this. We know that the national police absorbed a tremendous number of right-wing nationalist neo-Nazis. And they come in, and the first videotapes out of there show a town that's been destroyed. There's a few bodies around, but not many. And the mayor is bragging about how the town is totally in control. He's got control of everything. It's done. This was March 30th, the Russians left. March 31st, the Ukrainian forces come in. On April 2nd, a videotape was released. It's a little over a minute long, and it shows a dozen or so bodies, littering a street. It's a horrible video. I mean, it does, it's bad, but I think I talked with Alex beforehand. It's not that bad. What I mean by that is war is hell. War is hell. I can guarantee you there's worse scenes in Ukraine than what they showed on that street. That's just the way war is. Mariupol, I think, had even scenes that were more horrific than this because of the heavy fighting. But what made these bodies different is that many of them had been bound, and it looked like they had been executed. And so now the spin that's coming out is that the Russians did this. The Russians executed. Why would an army who's made so much sacrifice in defense of the commander's intent of not harming Ukrainian civilians, of not harming Ukrainian infrastructure, at the last minute throw it all away for the sake of killing 12 people? No. You know who killed them? I believe the Ukrainian National Police came in and began a program of retribution where good Ukrainian citizens pointed out Farmer Joe, who dared sell the Russians eggs. Well, that's a death sentence now. Miss Smith, she opened up a post office that, I know, but all I'm saying is anybody who is seen as collaborating or cooperating with the Russians, especially if you're a Russian speaker, it's a death sentence. I believe Some of these people were just captured and shot. Some were trying to escape and were gunned down in the process of escaping once it became clear that this retribution was taking place. And that this is 100%, well, I'm going to back it off. This is 90% the fault of the Ukrainians. But the Russians have the blame too, not because they perpetrated the crime, but if you can't be so blind to the reality of the situation that you're in, not to understand what's going to happen to the people who cooperated with you, collaborated with you. And you needed to bring buses in and say, guys, we're leaving. And if you stay, we're afraid that you're going to die. So we need you to pack a suitcase, get in the bus, and we're going to resettle you. Maybe at some point you can come back here when things have calmed down. But right now, we're afraid that if you stay, you're going to die. And give them at least the option of leaving. Now, maybe that option was given. Maybe we don't know. But obviously, the people who died weren't given that option or disregarded that option and paid the ultimate price. But there's nothing about this to make sense. And also here, I'll leave the final thing on this one. Right now we're speculating. We're just spitballing. We can end the speculation right now. Right now, Karim Khan, the senior prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, is in Ukraine with an investigatory team. He claims that he's investigating allegations of war crimes. Well, guess what, Karim? There's 12 bodies up in Bucha right now. Before they get moved and tainted, why don't you pull them out and have a forensic autopsy performed on them? Because when you do, you're going to find out time of death to near certainty. And I can guarantee you that the time of death isn't going to be March 30th, anywhere near March 30th. It's probably going to be close to April 1st, April 2nd, which tells you mechanism of death. Okay, again, you're the guy. We know what units were there. There's a videotape where the Ukrainian national policeman asks his boss, hey, they're not wearing the blue band. Can I shoot them? And he gives an expletive. Yeah, hell yeah, shoot them. And they shot him. They killed him. So mechanism of death. Where were they shot? Back of the head, back of the back, front. What killed them? Was there a sign of torture? Was there, had the bodies been moved? Did they die where they were at? Or had they been moved? I mean, normally when you're shot and you bleed out, there's going to be a big puddle of blood. But if you got a body on the ground and you flip it over and there ain't no blood, it tells me they were died somewhere else and brought here. These are things that a forensic investigation would show, and that forensic investigation can happen right now. Right now, they're there and they're not doing anything.
Yeah.
Why? Because the Ukrainian government doesn't want the truth.
Yeah.
Because if the truth comes out, you don't get all this wild speculation. You don't get the whole world foaming at the mouth. You don't get the Pope condemning the Russians.
Yeah.
There's going to be bigger issues than what Russia did to Ukraine. And I think at some point in time, Europe's going to wake up to the fact that maybe accepting a new security framework with Russia that de-emphasizes military conflict is the way to go. Maybe we should pull NATO infrastructure back to its 1997 levels. That doesn't mean that all the new members aren't NATO members. They are. It just means that there won't be any, British tanks, German tanks, French tanks, American tanks there. All that's pulled back. There won't be any more missile defense sites in Poland and Romania. And Russia then can sit there and say, and we'll pull our stuff back to the Western Military District, and we'll de-emphasize the military, the potential for military and military conflict. There's that. I think the Russians are not going to undertake an operation that will result in after the encirclement battle. I think it's all in on the encirclement battle. I think this is a life and death struggle, and so Russia will do what needs to be done to win this battle. But after that point, once you destroy the bulk of the Ukrainian military, you'll have some pockets left over. You'll have a pocket in Kharkov. You'll have a pocket in Kiev. You'll have a pocket around Lvov. And you'll have a pocket down in Odessa. And I think what the Russians will do is try to create the inevitability of the demise of these forces to compel a surrender, as opposed to turn Odessa into a larger version of Mariupol. Mariupol was a tragic necessity. Russia had to take the city. had to take the city to establish this, a solid line of communication connecting Crimea with southern Russia. Plus, from a symbolic standpoint, this was the defeat of the Azov battalion. That was their home base. This is where they were at. And fortunately for Russia, the Azov people provided Russia with around 15,000 martyrs that Russia could send to whatever the Valkyrie god, Nordic god that these Nazis worshipped. They're dead. There might be a few of them still dug out in the steel factory, but they're dead. But Russia doesn't want to do that again. First of all, Russia suffers loss. You don't fight that kind of fight without taking losses yourself. It's a very bloody, difficult fight. Civilians get killed by the hundreds, if not thousands. So I don't imagine Russia's, licking its lips to go into Odessa. What we see right now are strikes that are designed to lessen the ability of Odessa to survive if it had been brought under siege. I think they hit the oil, the fuel storage areas. So, there's no more fuel for Odessa. It's gone. They might have a couple caches here and there, but Russia has drones flying over. They'll see the fuel truck go into warehouse A, and then warehouse A will get hit by caliber missile B, and that's more fuel that's gone. And just after a while, you're just going to grind them down, and eventually, they'll have no choice but to surrender. And I think that's the goal of the Russians. Now, the West has largely ignored this, but in I think May of 2014, the right-wing nationalists came down and stuffed the House of Culture with 150 pro-Russian demonstrators, and then set the building on fire. Between 40 and 50 people were killed as a result. And the Russians have viewed this as one of the great crimes. And Russia has made it a point that they said it. We have all the names. We have all the names. We know who did this. They will be brought to justice. And again, Russia doesn't make statements like this and then walk away. So Odessa will be captured. There will be trials, and those perpetrators will be brought to justice in Odessa. In Odessa, not somewhere else. In Odessa, and they'll be hung by the neck until dead in Odessa for committing the crimes that they've committed. So,
and Scott Ritter has an article out today on RT.com called "The Truth About Bucha is Out There, but Perhaps Too Inconvenient to Be Discovered." And I'll give you a link to that in the comments, which go with the video, or in the description as well. Check that out. That's you up to date, I hope, on the Ukraine situation. We'll keep a watching brief on that, but the focus will now move on what's going to happen to the remaining Ukrainian forces, which are being encircled. But the reality is that the terms on offer to Ukraine will diminish from here onwards. And the realities of the situation are hopefully making themselves felt at a political level in Germany and in Ukraine in a way that will hopefully ease out and marginalise the neocons who started all this and who are currently the main impediment to its resolution. All right, I'll be back tomorrow with something which is not about the war in Ukraine, not about the COVID, not about the economic impending collapse. It's about none of that, but it's important nevertheless. And I hope you join me for that. And I'll be back with that, along with some reaction to your comments, which you've been putting in the videos. Okay, hope you join me for that tomorrow. In the meantime, this has been Fintan Dunn reporting. Thanks for joining me. See you soon.